And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the Monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have two of my good brothers here in the temple. The man coming fresh off of his excursion in Metrocon, and the man who is going to be the first person to argue about which state has better barbecue. Good brother Slick Rick. And the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, the man who co-interviewed earlier today, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
I'm slowly infecting every one of his spaces. Soon enough, Bane will surround him.
Oh. He's not wrong, folks. There is a meter, and it's slowly getting more full. Also, I think we all can agree Texas has the worst.
I think you're wrong, but okay.
It's mainly between Carolina and KC.
Yeah, I suppose I walked into this.
You're the one who said it.
That I did. But for this week, we're not going to be talking about barbecue or whose baseball team is tanking harder. The Royals are tanking. Don't try and argue with me on this.
As a Kansas Cityan, I will happily state he's not wrong. We take them and we roast them every time we can.
But at the very least, you weren't Boston this week.
Hey, I'm just waiting for the next few months for when the pigskin season starts, because then I can happily say I'm not Atlanta.
Low bar,
but it's facts.
And Coops isn't here to grumble about it for once.
No. But as you can see for this week, our topic this week is thinking outside the Ubi box. Because when we were doing Monastery Live in the usual format, there were a handful of companies that became the Unholy Quartet. You all know them. You know, EA, Activision Blizzard, 2K Games, Bethesda. The Unholy Quartet that always managed to find some new and interesting way to fuck up. And it wasn't like I was going out of my way to pick on them, they just kept fucking up.
It's it's literally just walk out. It's almost as if, hey, I'm walking outside. Oh, fuck up right in front of the yard.
And at the time, there were some people asking me if I would put Ubisoft into that list. At the time, my mindset was Ubisoft hasn't done enough to piss me off to warrant doing that.
They more disappoint than piss off.
Mm-hmm. However, these things change. And if I was doing Monastery Live now, I probably would have to reconsider that decision.
No, because as much as things have changed, they have remained the same. The four of the Unholy Quartet have gotten just that much more unholy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's not an admission that I would do it. I'm just saying I might have to reconsider.
Yeah.
But but originally the plan that I had for this was to cover what has been called the UbiBox formula. A formula that was kind of pioneered by Assassin's Creed and is one that they have been trying to force into the vast majority of their games.
And has also slowly infected many other open world properties.
Yeah. But the reason I wanted to cover it at the time is when the idea initially came to me to do it, this was right around the time that that one Ubisoft dev and that one Guerrilla Games dev were bitching and molding about Elden Ring's UI/UX
and its lack of specification compared to what they've done.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I think we talked about it.
We did.
And how the reason why they were having such a problem with it is because they had worked themselves into believing that there was a certain way to do things. And then Elden Ring comes along and ignores all of that and is successful.
It's one of the... I think the UbiBox formula in open world games is one of the biggest examples of design by gospel in the video game world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree, but I'd like to hear your take as to why.
It's not just Ubisoft who pushes it. While it's a system that may have been pioneered early on by Assassin's Creed, climb the tower, expose part of your map to see all the potential optional objectives and your main objectives, go around, do those things in that part of the map, rinse, repeat. While pioneered by Assassin's Creed, it was truly codified by Far Cry 3, and because both of those games did really well, we started to see it spread out into other open world games. Not all of them. I mean, one of the biggest open world games that people love to play to this day that still hasn't gotten a sequel, GTA 5. That one was like its predecessors, like its other 3D predecessors, all the way from GTA 3. Your progress was gated more by story than anything, but you could adventure a little bit more comparatively. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the UbiBox formula, it points you, hey, go to tower or go to central point of interest to expose all other points of interest. We even saw this issue, though not because of gospel, but to an extent that it actually worked in Breath of the Wild. That idea actually worked really well because each of the central points was its own puzzle and challenge, along with everything else being puzzles and challenges. And they weren't all just pointed out to you immediately, unlike with the UbiBox.
But you would still have to find, because to an extent they're not those central towers in Breath of the Wild. They aren't marked as in the regular UbiBox formula, so you still have to do a bit of exploration just to find it.
Well, I mean, you don't really have to mark a giant-ass tower you can see in the distance.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the pins were for. It's just once you got to them and got the region map from them, you weren't as lost anymore. Winterwolf makes a good point here, saying that, there's no sense of exploration and wonder since everything's marked.
Yep.
And to me, a lot. Now when it comes to open world games, just in general, in my experience, a lot of open world games don't feel like open worlds. They feel like a set of sandboxes that have been kit bashed together. Like the kind of like a set of individual chapter maps that you're going along instead of a world.
Yeah. I think the last open world game that I actually consider open world, and this is going to be a deep cut for a lot of people. Elder Scrolls 2, Daggerfall.
Ooh.
Even Morrowind felt more amusement parkish with respect to how its world was presented, though it didn't hold your hand nearly as much as, say, something like Oblivion or Skyrim does. It's really the last thing that felt like an actual explorative experience was Daggerfall.
And when it comes to Daggerfall is like you said, it is very much a deep cut.
Yeah, it's old. Even with the Unity remake, it's old.
Mm-hmm. But I'd say a big problem that I think really ends up hurting a lot of open world experiences is the fact that it takes the wrong lesson from the 30 seconds of fun, and this is something I've talked about in the past. Mm-hmm. There's an infamous quote from a Bungie developer, I think around the time of Halo 2, where he said that if you can make 30 seconds of fun, you can stretch that out into a whole game. And he's gone on record saying that he hates that quote because people misinterpreted what he was trying to get at.
And misuse it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because if you look at, say, Combat Evolved, you have that 30 seconds in the form of guns, grenades, and melee. But you're constantly recontextualizing how that 30 seconds is implemented. Like at this on the Pillar of Autumn, you have these confined areas, kind of like the days of Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you get to Halo, you get a more open setup. Then you start introducing vehicles. Then you start introducing different types of enemies. Then you start introducing crazier stuff like the Flood and so on, and introducing different types of environments with different types of weapons and routes that you can take. You know, it's constantly changing the context of that 30 seconds.
Yeah, the 30 seconds is a specific loop that you then continue to change again and again to make everything feel fun.
If to use another example when it comes to this 30-second thing, consider the way combat keeps changing in Arkham Asylum.
Oh yeah,
with each and every additional enemy requiring new tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I should say each and every additional enemy type.
Yeah.
Yeah, even then it's like, even when they bring in those old ones from even when they, not just Asylum, I would say, like, when they go into the newer games, like, I would say, like, especially, like, City, where they bring in, like, a couple of the ones they didn't have in Asylum. Like, they still took time for you to get used to it a little bit before they brought in those new enemies.
Well, the reason I bring up Asylum in this case is that that's where the formula took root.
Started. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying how it's like they escalated a little bit within the following games.
Escalation isn't really a factor with this. It's more about constantly shifting that 30 seconds. But
yep.
with a lot of games that utilize that formula. First off, they want to use a leveling and skill tree system so that they can say that they have RPG elements. You can't see it, but I'm doing big ass finger quotes with that.
I mean, you can hear it in your voice, Monk. It's pretty evident.
Yep.
But you all know what I mean. Doing a leveling system and a skill tree that serves no purpose.
Or serves very little purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the thing is that there is the lack of variety when it comes to those side quests. With it that you end up revealing after you go to the Eagle Tower or its equivalent, because it's always either escorting, kicking somebody's ass, trailing somebody, or pocketing somebody.
Yep. Especially like when you first play the games or when they're first introduced. Okay, it's great, but now that we've done that so much, it's like to see those type of missions, even in the modern games, like we understand they're necessary, but still.
Well, it may not be necessary. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The entire reason that the Ubi box formula is as disparaged as it is amongst many gamers is it doesn't necessarily serve the purpose it once did, and is instead them just making the formula for making the formula's sake. Again, designed by gospel being the issue. And because so many places have seen how successful the formula is for their games, they copied them, and it made them money, and that's why it's become so annoyingly ubiquitous. Which is why I do want to bring up that Phoenix Rising, which is an Ubisoft game, did subvert the normal Ubi box formula. Yes, you still had landmarks you climbed, and you literally climbed them, much like in Breath of the Wild. But once you got up there, the most you did was look around. You had to use literally looking around to uncover secrets. And you couldn't uncover them all from that distance. You still had to go around looking in minutia to find other stuff. While not a perfect subversion of the formula, it was still a good attempt.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to and I think one might ask, well, if that's the case, why am I not roasting things like Final Fantasy 15 or Insomniac Spider-Man, because they occupy a similar formula. I think in both of those cases, the sole reason that they are to an extent able to get away with it is, in the case of 15, it doesn't abuse it nearly as much, and from what it's been a while since I played, but from what I recalled, it's not like fast travel was as everywhere as it is in some other works.
Like, I would say it's like going with the fast travel aspect with 15 compared to most UbiBox formulas. It's almost instantaneous. There's literally nothing. I would say within the time of the story, has no little consequence. But since the day and night have a significant effect in terms of how the open world aspect of 15 is done, there is still a bit of consequences if you fast travel. It's like, oh, you can get there, but depending on how you do it, there is still going to be effect on the time of day.
That, and the fact that you have to in order to actually you actually have a leveling system that matters.
Oh yeah.
Especially since you don't level up until you get to camp.
Get to camp or get to an inn.
Mm-hmm.
Camp, inn, trailer, until you can properly take a
Rest.
powwow.
Yeah, until you can rest. Also, the fast travel in 15 is restricted. It's restricted to the places you can park the regalia at.
Yep.
And compared to the map of Eos that you end up exploring, it's not like you'd be able to just park that thing anywhere.
Yeah. I'd also like to note that Final Fantasy 15 avoids a lot of the Ubi Box formula because there's no central tower that reveals your side quests to you. Many of your side quests are only revealed to you if you're in proximity to them.
Yep.
You have to talk to people and find stuff. So exploration is actually encouraged.
Like, it still feels like it still feels like it's supposed to be its own thing. It just adopts a little bit of the Ubi Box formula, but it doesn't like openly embrace it like a lot of other games have. It just takes what it needs and then melds it to what it needs for 15.
Now, in the case of Insomniac's Spider-Man, I'd say the reason it's able to get away with it is having a wider mission variety, and having a much more fluid combat system.
I think it's simpler than that, Monk. I think the reason Insomniac Spider-Man can get away with using an Ubi Box formula is, well, frankly, your method of travel. Your being fucking Spider-Man, going up on stuff, first of all, feels natural to Spider-Man's modus operandi. You see him climb stuff looking for trouble in the comics and the movies and the cartoons. It's part of what he actually does. And yes, the mission variety is nice and wide. You have a lot of cool things you can do. But getting to places itself feels fun. And there are still elements that you have to find that aren't revealed by going high.
Yep.
So it really does boil down to Spidey go whoosh. and playing Spidey brain go brrr.
I think it's like the thing we're trying to get with both things is like when it comes to like major travel compared to it works. You don't abuse the fast travel if it's available because it doesn't work within the context of what the story is supposed to be and how it feels natural to the game. With most Ubisofts, it feels forced.
And I think this is as good a time as any to discuss when was the canary in the coal mine, i.e., because as we said, this formula has been around since Assassin's Creed when it comes to Ubisoft's work. But I think with both Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, it's important to identify when this formula became a problem.
I know we talked about it earlier today. My personal area where you could start to see it becoming to overstay its welcome was actually in the later parts of the Ezio trilogy.
Are we? I think you said the tail end of Brotherhood.
Yeah,
I can see that.
It felt very much like everything was becoming very carbon copy, and Ezio's story was becoming subsumed by these copy-paste side activities.
Yes. When I played, I forget the third one. Was it Brotherhood or
Revelations?
Revelations. Thank you. It's been a while, but Revelations. I felt like I get where they were coming from, but that whole story felt unnecessary to an extent. It was just like, if I really want to be honest. So a lot of the stuff they had to do, it's like I felt it wasn't even needed.
I think I think Revelations there was a point to be made.
Yep.
What I think created the issue was it taking the was with Revelations, it was the problem of where do you go from here, and revisiting places that we had been to as Altair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's very
Contextualized in a later part of history, yeah.
yeah.
Even though it was a later part, and consider what Brotherhood added versus what Revelations added. With Brotherhood, you had the whole thing of recruiting, training assassins, sending them on missions, and being able to use them as backup in fights, or to do group assassinations, which I happen to think was really fucking cool.
It was. You could whistle at them and they would kill people from a distance or pop out of hiding areas and drag dudes in. Also, Ezio could just get in and get the target.
Mm-hmm.
I abused the shit out of that system later in the game.
But you have and since a lot of it was built on him becoming Il Mentore and rebuilding the Assassin Brotherhood, at least within Italy, and the fact that you were sending people out on assassinations outside of Rome.
Yep.
You had this one gimmick that had massive implications throughout the whole game. Now, contrast that I just said with what is added to the sandbox with Revelations.
I don't think there was much, just new tool types, and that
explosives.
Was
it. That's just different types of bombs. That's really it. Because Ottoman Empire, we're dealing with the early stages of proliferated gunpowder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never able to wrap my head around why an assassin would want to carry around that much gunpowder.
Reasons, monk.
Nope, I got nothing.
I am being as facetious as possible, as anyone can tell.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to, as much as there are issues with Assassin's Creed 3, and there are issues with Assassin's Creed 3, I would like to state that at least it tried to recontextualize and change the Ubibox formula for the American frontier. Which I think it did pretty well. I think that what it did more was create a sea battle system that everybody loved so much they got a pirate game out of it. Thank you, Black Flag.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the few games I'll be able to play with my family in the background, and they aren't angry about having to hear the background noise just because I play the shanties all the time.
The shanties, so good. But
Amen.
But even then, the damage was done not just by the tail end of Brotherhood and almost all of Revelations, but then you also had Far Cry 3, which all of you now, I know you're gonna say, oh, Far Cry 3. No. That is what we call hindsight sour grapes. Far Cry 3 was actually really good. A simple, entertaining story that, wasn't the deepest thing. A really fun place to explore, and a villain that unfortunately got wasted in the second half. But it did a lot of good things, and the Ubibox formula actually assisted them there. It felt like rather than designing it that way for the sake of designing it that way. It was designed that way because it really did facilitate the game. And then you go on to Far Cry 4 and 5, and they just copy the same thing because copying the same thing is how to make a good Far Cry game, right, guys? Is the impression that I got. Of course, then there's the other things they copy from game to game, such as Far Cry 4's 15-minute win if you just do what the bad guy says at the beginning of the game, and them dragging that forward into Far Cry 5, which you did it once. It was a cool little surprise if you actually do what you're told thing. That was a nice little touch, but then in the 5th game, everybody's going to be expecting it now, because we knew at that point that Ubisoft likes to copy themselves when they see something being trendy and popular, and when it gathers a lot of attention.
And there's nothing wrong on paper with doing that, but when you make it blatant that you are copying instead of putting a new spin on what came before, that's when people are going to cry foul about things,
or just get bored of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Which is what's been happening with the Ubibox formula ever since, the early Assassin's Creed stuff.
You want to know what I think was a case of really throwing in the towel when it came to Assassin's Creed?
When they changed it from an assassination game to a generic open combat, open world game with some assassination elements and RPG elements?
Yeah, I'm specifically referring to Origins.
Oh yeah.
It's like now, instead of going with this dual timeline narrative across this ancestry that we had been going with for this long, even if some people think the Desmond story is boring.
I thought the end to the Desmond story was them throwing in the towel, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In order to save the world, you gotta die. Did we really need a Jesus allegory? Did we really?
No, but let's face
apparently
it.
Apparently they didn't learn from the Wachowskis. Remember that scene with Path of Neo where they decided to not do the Jesus thing?
Yep, because it only really fit inside cinema and it wouldn't be fun for a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to say apparently the Wachowskis have not learned from the Wachowskis, if only because they're trying to recontextualize everything they've ever done with the Matrix to be about something entirely that it wasn't. After the fact.
That is not how allegory works, you fucking numpties.
And also, because we didn't need a Matrix 4. Why did they make a Matrix 4? It doesn't make any fucking sense.
I think it's because of the fact that their post-Matrix stuff hasn't exactly done well. Cloud Atlas was okay, but I'm in the minority with that.
No, I liked Cloud Atlas. It was fun.
Still minority, guys.
And Jupiter Ascending was hot trash.
I felt sad that Mila Kunis was involved.
And of course, I would of the non-Matrix stuff that they were involved with, I'd say the one that was the most tolerable, even if it was Rainbow Vomit, was Speed Racer.
I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for the movie and the game.
I never played the game.
Game was actually very good. It was like your basic racer, but they added. If you've seen the ending segment of the movie where you see him doing tricks, moving out of the way of people trying to hit him. Imagine doing that for the actual race. So if someone gets too close, you would shake your controller and then you literally would fling your opponent off the track for a bit.
The only thing I'm going to get on you about is using the phrase "typical racer" because there's a lot of ways I can take that.
Fair enough, but you know what I mean.
Well,
To an extent.
I think he means arcade racer, Monk.
Yeah.
If we're gonna be sticklers about it, racers along the lines of F-Zero.
Yes.
See, that I'm perfectly fine with.
Because I don't think you could do simulationist with Speed Racer.
No.
There's no way that you're getting, any of the rally car games.
Yeah.
Don't completely knock it because there was that weird ass kart racing style game that used F1 that Codemasters had made, which was weird.
A thing. It was a thing, Monk. There's a reason it was only a thing and not some things.
Mm-hmm. But even with that, the big reason that I had my issues with Speed Racer was just all the CG and all the color. I will give them its due for answering the one riddle that everybody knew regarding Racer X.
Well, that and also I always have. Okay, my brother and I, when we watched, our favorite spot was the ninja getting killed by a grandpa who was a sumo.
But
it was also the proper use of John Goodman.
Yeah.
Ninjas, more like nanjas.
I gotta watch that movie again. Oh, that is.
But getting back on the rails. I think the reason why Origins is a throwing in the towel thing is because it was throwing in a bunch of stuff from other games without any real idea of what it wanted to be. Because you have the leveling up thing, you have equipment like it's trying to be an RPG, you have a combat system that is trying really, really hard to be either a Souls-like or a Witcher-like.
Not Souls, not Witcher. Yep.
It's in a it wants to be both of them, but it can't be either of them, so it's in a no man's land.
Yep. They decided, from what I understand, to go much more Souls-like with Odyssey and with Valhalla.
Mm-hmm. And even though it's cute to be playing in these different time frames, if I'm being honest, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and the Viking Age are three eras that nobody actually asked for.
I think
no, the Viking Age was one. That's for sure.
What were the most requested eras people?
Japan.
People
fucking
wanted
Japan.
People wanted Japan. They wanted it so much that then Sucker Punch stepped in and said, "All right, we'll do it."
Yeah, Sucker Punch created Assassin's Creed Japan, the game. Let's be fully honest here. Ghost of Tsushima is so much Assassin's Creed Japan that I'm surprised Ubisoft didn't try to somehow sue for copyright.
Yeah, but that one was the most obvious one ever, because as soon as you came up with the idea, it's Assassins. 9 times out of 10, what's the one country everyone thinks of when it comes to what the Assassins were basically about?
Besides
Japan.
the Middle East,
which we already did several times over.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why Assassin's Creed took place in the Middle East in the first place, was
Yep.
because that's where the assassin originated.
Mm-hmm. But then most people would think of that next thing people will go to is ninjas with Japan. But other than that, what this was being legitimately curious. What were the other ones that people usually requested.
I think some people wanted China because of the character who makes a brief appearance at the end of Revelations. Of course, which we would end up getting with Chronicles, which was the complete opposite of what people were asking for. Chronicles felt like they were trying to take Assassin's Creed and shift it into this 2D Prince of Persia-like, which isn't what people wanted.
What's funny, they had done that once before. Do you know when? When they made a 2D Prince of Persia-like for mobile flip phones.
I remember.
With their with the original Assassin's Creed plot, essentially. It even looked and played like a 2D Prince of Persia, except with the trappings of Assassin's Creed.
Mm-hmm.
You were even still playing Altair, and your grappling hook also doubled as an assassination weapon.
Because that's how that works. Oh, what the hell am I saying? That's not how that works. That's not how any of that works.
Yeah, you could spear it into people and throw them off of ledges and stuff. It was fucking hilarious.
And speaking of that, Ghost of Tsushima also kind of has the Ubibox formula, but Ghost of Tsushima is beloved. And much like we did with FF15 and Insomniac Spider-Man, I think we should. I think the big reason why it's able to skirt this is for a few things. One, the subject matter of being such a gung ho tribute to both samurai film in general and the works of Akira Kurosawa, to the point that we have a Kurosawa mode endorsed by the estate.
Not only that, but the Ubibox formula is slightly there because of the way that you can get your different activities and such. It's not entirely there. It's got surface similarities, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there's still so much you have to find on your own. Hi Inari shrines, hi haiku spots, hi in general the actual shrines that get you some of the best charms in the game. You can find them through specific types of landmarks.
Yep. Or here's a good one. A lot of the side quests, not like the story side quests, but actual side quests, you can't. The only notification you technically, for a number of them, the major notification you get that there's something going on that you can do for a side quest is listening as you're traveling around. So
I remember the very first side quest I found at the beginning of the game was to liberate a giant-ass dojo. And I took one look at that place, and I was like, holy shit, I'm going to die if I go in there. And I didn't come back to that dojo until I had a few of my ghost level ups to get some additional powers and power-ups and a couple more stances. And then I went in there and baited out dogs to kill them and baited people out and stood on roofs to murder the hell out of them. I did a lot of that through just repeated stealth killing. And then the guys were all fucking freaked out, and I could legitimately go in and bash them down because they were scared. And then finally, when you had to kill the one general that was there in the duel, you weren't so worried anymore because there wasn't anybody rushing you in the middle of your duel.
Of course, the other thing is, once again, having a combat system that is able to stand out. And I have had trouble putting into words what made Ghost of Tsushima's combat system work.
It's fluid. I mean, the one thing that a combat system should have, if it's no, even if it's a turn-based combat system, is that the interchanges between player and enemies should feel fluid. And Ghost of Tsushima's was not only fluid, it was adaptively fluid. You both for player and for opponents. Then, of course, there were always the duels. Those are fucking chef's kiss.
Oh yeah. There was a little part when I was playing. I was like, can I just get a game mode where it's nothing but duels? So I thought those were like some of the better parts of the game.
And I think they understood how strong of a combat system they had, because the first expansion that we had was that multiplayer thing.
Oh yeah.
Which was one giant gauntlet. But I think the reason why I point these kind of things out is the formula in itself is not bad. What happens is when you're using that same formula but not doing anything with it to justify the purchase.
Again, more of that design by gospel issue.
I also would say like not trying to not trying to improve it, adapt it a little bit, make little modifications to make it a little bit more unique, fit the game, etc., etc.
And the other issue when it comes to digging around for these not digging around, but just when it comes to the formula is the rule of three is not something that you should always adhere to.
Nope.
There's the whole thing of three waves. In fact, something that both the original Halo has gotten mocked for, and something that Destiny got mocked for is the whole interact with an object and then hold down for a period of time while some glowy motherfucker does something in the background. There's a reason why with Combat Evolved everybody hates the library. Because that's all that it was. And to be fair, the library in Halo 2 was not as bad, but I'm not going to call it good.
It just was.
It's a case of it pisses me off less.
Yeah, it just was.
And personally, I think one other issue that ended up happening when it came to Assassin's Creed is how combat worked. The whole thing of having this almost schema-inspired combat system that relied far more on riposte than outright attacking. It ended up creating the problem of waiting for something to happen.
Yep, and then when they went with, I can say that at least when they went with Origin and Odyssey and Viking or in Valhalla, that the combat system did get fleshed out too far in the other direction. They overcorrected.
I was like, because like I literally remember like whenever a battle would come in, just hit in the first few games where it's just like wait for like the sound to it go through and just hit the counter. You literally just have to hit counter in the first games.
And that brings me to something else. The sole reason that Zan and I ended up talking about the Malding incident, well, the two Malding incidents, the first one being the whole UI UX thing, and the other one being when Shadversity decided to act like a fucking idiot, is in regard to the to the stuff that the screen became festooned with.
The fact that you got more and more UI and less UX.
Mm-hmm. And I do think, for the sake of it, we should go into what we mean by UI and UX.
I can do that, since that's actually my area of expertise, considering where I am in the networking world. UI is basically what it sounds like on the tin. It's a user interface. It is what you use to interact with what you are playing, working on, whatever. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's on their computer right now, your UI is the thing where your mouse is. That's one of your UI elements, as are icons and everything else. For anybody who's on phone, it's all the things you tap and see. Those tools, how you interact with what you're doing, those are UI. UX stands for user experience. And user experience is a little more ephemeral as far as metrics go. But the idea for user experience when it comes to application use or networking is ease of use. We want the UI to be easy to understand, so that your experience is that it's easy to use. And the reason that the UIs become festooned with little things here and there and everywhere in a lot of these games is for that same, or at least ostensibly for that same reason: ease of use. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, when it comes to a video game, ease of use isn't necessarily going to make a fun game.
It usually depends on the target demographic, because the simplest things doesn't always mean it works best. Like, maybe to an extent, if it's like a early learner's game, but you gotta put a little bit of challenge in. Not a lot, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. But just for the fuck of it, let's consider this is a screenshot that I just grabbed off of image search from Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Okay.
And just look at the UI in this one screen. It doesn't seem like a whole lot, but I'd say one of the big things is the fact that it has to show a checklist for whatever adventure that you're doing, or the times where a shooter would show a objective when the thing that you do for your objective doesn't even change all that much.
I would say, like, the only thing I would, like, preferably, like, if you know the basic thing, it's the same throughout a whole chapter. Because going with these back with Assassin's Creed, whenever every part is technically a memory, and usually you know, like, by the time you really get into the mission, you remember, you know, the main objective for that memory. But still, I'm looking at it right here, and, like, maybe a couple of the side stuff, if you were going to 100%, you could possibly keep that up, maybe get rid of it.
So this actually can even be compared to earlier Assassin's Creed games. In 1 and 2, when you were on a mission, like, this actually shows your mission, Connacht, they must pay, kill the targets, and then a King's Plea, which I'm guessing is extra stuff you can get, remain undetected, no unessential kills. These were never just shown on screen. You would see them maybe in the menu, if you looked at the mission details, but they wouldn't just sit there on screen the whole time. In addition, the compass at the top, which I'm guessing is there because it's part of the artifact of being an open world game, that wasn't there in earlier games that I remember.
No, I think that was added around Origins.
And so
when it comes to the way that the recent games have handled equipment, just when it comes to UI, let me show this as a case of way too much stuff.
I remember this bullshit. Yeah, no, this was... You basically have to equip one weapon or one piece of armor, which... Why was that ever included? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm here, super late.
Hey there, Starlight. We are taking the piss out of Ubisoft's approach to UI.
Oh my god. Yeah, okay.
You can see examples in GeekWatch.
Okay. Did you talk about Siege? Rainbow Six Siege and Assassin's Creed?
We're currently roasting Assassin's Creed's take to
user interface.
The user interface, especially in the menus.
Yeah, because you may recall that a few weeks after Elden Ring had released, a few Ubisoft devs and one Guerrilla Games dev got pissy at the UI for Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
And people ended up roasting them, including this infamous image.
The image of if Ubisoft designed Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fucking true.
And the point with this kind of image, and it's something that Zan and I have talked about in the past, is by putting in all these UI elements to supposedly idiot-proof their game, it ends up creating a degree of condescension.
Well, I think I actually think that this also comes from understanding their aging audience, Monk. Many people who've played Ubisoft games throughout their life started probably when they were teens and are now adults. And something that I happen to agree with Asmongold about is the various reasons, or the various different core gaming elements we see entering into games, things like this type of UI or microtransactions or anything like that, is due to the dwindling amount of time that adults have to play video games. Time is very precious to them. And so,
Very true.
And so making the game streamlined to not waste their time, or adding in microtransactions that give them an achievement that takes time now, is a way that these companies prey on adults. Yes, microtransactions and loot boxes and shit prey on kids too because of the gambling addictive side of things. But it really is.
Also affects adults with gambling habits and stuff.
Mm-hmm. But even more than that, yeah, even more than that, it's the fact that, I mean, let's talk about the ostensible reason the WoW token was created. Tommy comes home from his 9-to-5 job. He's got 2.6 kids and a wife, like the American dream, and he's got maybe an hour or two to play WoW. So he can't.
Did you say 2.6 kids?
Yes, that's the average amount of kids in the American dream if you average it out.
I thought you meant like a 2.5 kid, like there's a half child. I was like, what do you mean?
To an extent, you do have one. It's called a pet.
No, it's a joke based off of the literal numerical averages shown under certain.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I'm just like, to some people, a lot of people, especially those who either like biologically can't, or just because of the circumstances they can't get a kid, they'll treat their pet.
We understand, Rick, but
Rails.
The the token says it's there for this guy who can only play 1 to 2 hours, maybe every 3 days. And so now he can use the WoW token to purchase stuff. But any player knows that that's not the guy purchasing the WoW token. The guy purchasing the WoW token is the guy who already has 499 mounts and wants that last one, and doesn't want to faff around with drop rates. And so he buys WoW tokens to get that last 500th mount and be like, yeah, I got that mount now. It's all these things of people who started in their youth and are now adults with major responsibilities and less time. These quote-unquote innovations, and in some cases they are innovations, I won't deny that, are there to capitalize on these people who have a lack of time. Which, I'm going to tell everyone in Ubisoft about their user experience kerfuffles back when Elden Ring first came out. You can't get me, you, Ubisoft people, you can't get me to play your games for more than 2 hours at a time before I'm kind of bored and want to put it down. I played 100 hours of Elden Ring shared amongst 2 weeks, but specifically just my fucking weekends, and beat that game. I have the 9 to 6 job that normal people, most normal people have. I have the other responsibilities in my life that eat at my time. And I wrecked my own sleep schedule to play Elden Ring because it was that fucking good. You are hamstringing your games. You make them boring.
And a lot of people seem to think that there's some magic trick that needs to be used, and that's really the damning part. Is this idea that one has to trick the audience. But we've focused way too much on Ubisoft. I want to shift over into the Far Cry series, because
Far Cry's still Ubi.
You mean Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, Assassin's Creed. Sorry, have I mentioned that this is the third show that I've done today?
Also, I would like to say the magic trick for any developer who might be listening. The magic trick is make a good fucking game. There's no goddamn magic. Just make a good game.
Focus on the game and only the
Actually
game.
put time into it, and not should it be too meta. Like, we need this and we need that to match the other games that came out. Just make your own unique game.
What you're referring to is what's known as scope creep.
Yeah.
But
basically, if it doesn't fit the game and what the game is about, get rid of it.
But when it comes to this whole thing of trying to chase past success, I can think of no better example of that mode of thinking than the Far Cry series. Because every Far Cry since 3 has tried to replicate 3, but just in a different environment.
Except for 3's spin-off, everybody loves Far Cry Blood Dragon.
And what was Blood Dragon? And Blood Dragon was trying to be just an 80s ass acid trip.
An 80s cyberpunk acid trip, Monk.
We all
love Blood Dragon.
I was gonna say, like, we all know what it was. And at the end of the day, it wasn't taking itself too seriously. And god damn it,
there's a reason why I forget the guy who played Kyle Reese, but he had a lot of fun with his time with Blood Dragon. Most, as opposed to the time that he spent with Aliens Colonial Marines. Hello, Randy.
We don't talk about Pitchford.
Yeah, I don't talk about the greasy bitch.
What?
Randall S. Pitchford III, also known as Randy, also known as Greasy Bastard.
Also known as a bottom to Ashley Lynch. We know she's pegging you, Randy. We know she's pegging you.
Mm-hmm.
It's Woman's Day all the time for her. Okay.
But within that setup, you have even with the slight variety that you see with Assassin's Creed, which had at least the dignity to try and reboot itself. With Far Cry, it's become so much of a formula that you know it's like a song you know all the words to, even if you haven't heard the song in years. Because a no man's land away from civilization, or in some Banana Republic like situation. Check.
Hi, Far Cry 6 and 5 and 4 and 3
and 6.
I said 6.
No, wait. Oh yes, 6.
A coastal personality psychopath right on the cover. Check.
Hi, 3 and 4 and 5. I don't think it's on the cover for 6 though.
No, I thought it was.
Let me look real quick.
Pretty sure it is. The guy is there on the cover.
Oh yeah, him and his son, who is apparently the
bad.
The Diego is, I believe, the person you play.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Not in the beginning, right? Getting thrown right into a situation you could have avoided by just doing nothing. Also check.
Hello, 4, 5, and 6.
And an ending that is the worst case scenario. That is the worst case scenario, even if you're given a choice at the end.
5?
4 as well.
5 was pretty bad.
See, the only one that didn't do that is 3, because your choice was worst case ending and then going home. Well, in 3, going home was that's the end of the hero's journey, Monk. That's the full cycle. He's been through the cycle at that point.
Yep.
I'm sure his brother is dead, which really sucks.
Isn't the other option to be sacrificed or some shit? I can't.
The other option was to kill all your friends and have sex with the cult lady, where she then stabs you in the heart as you're filling her up.
Yeah, dude. Fuck.
Because you would make the greatest warrior, the two of you together, and so she will have your child, and now you're dead. This is a classic example of the trope. Good job breaking it, hero.
And let's not forget that the sole reason that we have the charismatic villain is because of Voss.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Just.
Do you guys see the fan-based video that someone made with him in it or something?
There's a lot of different fan-based videos with Voss. Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down?
Like, let's face it, he was...
When it first came out, I mean...
Yeah.
This one video. It's pretty crazy.
I'm with this right now. It's come from the guy who hasn't played a lot of Far Cry. When the most noble thing you can tell a guy, who hasn't played it, is the key line from Voss. And you get basic idea of what his character is. That says something.
Yeah, but Voss was actually a good villain. And then they have to kill him in a series of QTEs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You don't even get an actual boss fight with him. Of course, that's par for the course for Far Cry 3. The actual final boss you don't actually fight in a gun battle or anything either. it's a series of QTEs as well. And if you fail any step, you die and have to start over at the beginning of the QTEs.
The rare exception to the rule in the... Oh, there was one other thing I forgot to put on the checklist. Managing to piss off journalists by not taking a political side. And journalists demanding that you take a political side. Check. Hello, 4, 5, and 6.
6? Like, was it?
I don't remember much of 4, to be honest with you.
If 4 was the game that introduced, if you just sit there and wait at the very beginning of the game, you get a better ending than the ending of the game if you play it.
Oh yeah,
because you're remember that the goal of the main character in 4 is just to get his mother's ashes to where she wants them laid to rest. And you meet the bad guy, Pagan Min, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll help you put your mother's ashes to rest." And you're sitting down to have, was it crab rangoons with him?
like you have some kind of snack with him.
Well, and you guys are about to sit down and eat before you go put your mother's ashes to rest, have a little time together, and go home. But he's like, "Hold on, just a moment. Just wait here 15 minutes. I've got to go take care of something," because he gets a notification from one of his guards.
Oh, I remember.
And,
oh my God.
Like at that point, the game literally gives you a marker outside of the villa telling you to escape. And everything that has been built up to this point that you know about Pagan Min, he's mercurial, he's capricious, he's crazy, he murders people for no reason. You see this through the intro, basically, when you get to him. You have no reason to trust his words and stay there. You have no reason. The game has done everything in its power to make you distrust waiting with this guy longer than is necessary. But if you sit there and wait 15 real-world minutes, 15 actual minutes...
Get a secret ending. Yeah, he comes back.
He comes back. He's like, "Okay, sorry about that. Let's eat. You didn't even touch your crab rangoons. Let's eat, and then we'll go put your mother's ashes to rest, and we can also enjoy a little bit of recreation." And so you eat, put your mother's ashes to rest, go shoot rockets with the guy, and that's the end. That's it.
Yeah, dude, it's the end. And then none of that. The whole game didn't even need to happen.
Yeah, you don't have to go through all the fighting and heartache and faction battles and eventually killing Pagan Min. And honestly, it's a better ending because Pagan Min proves that he's not that bad a guy. Yes, he's a fucking warlord in the middle of a banana republic, essentially. Yes, but he's not that bad a guy.
Like you could tell, like at the very least through that interaction, like he's is he a tyrant and all that crazy stuff? Yes, all that's proven. But he's still a bit of a decent guy. He understands what you're doing.
And the big thing is, Pagan Min, the everything you get from him throughout, if you do play the game as it's intended, I guess is the best way to put it. Everything you get is this. He didn't think of you as involved in his business, so there was literally no reason for him to try and kill you at all until you made yourself part of his business. He's got a boundary. The guy, if you're fucking around in what is his business, yeah, you're gonna get fucked. But if you're just some guy if you're just some guy who your mom used to know Pagan Min and used to be part of this country, you're not part of anything. So yeah, he's gonna help you put the ashes away, have a little fun, let's go shoot some goddamn RPG 7s, and then you're gonna go home. And it's like yes, that was a cool fucking ending. That was a nice innovation that that Ubisoft did for Far Cry 4. And then, the same as they've been chasing what quote-unquote succeeded in previous installments, like they did with ramping up on the Ubibox formula from 3 to 4. From 4 to 5, you have the same situation. If at the very beginning of the game you do not try to arrest the cult leader, you
go
get
back onto the helicopter and you can fly away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually got that because I spilled a drink and then I came back and I'm like, wait, what? It ended?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so stupid.
And when it comes to Joseph Seed, it was very clear that they were trying to channel Deliverance in Montana, which it's like somebody was trying to do the Southern cult leader in a place that is as far removed from South as you can get, but it is still the whole thing of the personable but somewhat psychotic leader.
Yeah.
Just being the leader of a cult instead of the leader of a banana republic in the middle of nowhere.
I'd also like to point out that Far Cry 5 is where Ubisoft tried to be political.
They fucked up.
Well, yes, and I'll get to that. They tried to show that this is what happens when people get too fundamental and too traditional, and all of the other things that the progressive psychotics say are bad. And they even created a song that was supposed to be the epitomization of how crazy these people are and how bad it is. The name of that song, Keep Your Rifle by Your Side. And that song was so catchy and so well described exactly what every 2A absolutist, 2A fundamentalist, anyone who supports the Second Amendment in the U.S. And yes, I'm a 2A absolutist, so fuck y'all. That song became an actual anthem. And there's a meme that still goes around on the net today where it's the Chad face singing Keep Your Rifle by Your Side, and it's one of the crying Soyjack faces going, no, it's supposed to be a scathing remark about how bad fundamentalism is. You're not supposed to like it.
That bitch.
Keep your rifle by your side. And point of fact, my Glock is at my headboard, my rifle's by my side. So I mean, I am the song.
I don't got any guns, but I do have swords and blades and machetes.
Amen.
Yeah.
Get you a gun. They're so much fun. But the point is that this was the point where they tried to go super one-side political.
No guns. This is why we people shouldn't have guns, kind of thing.
Not only that, but like the fact that it's very clear, like Monk said, trying to channel Deliverance.
Made me want to get a gun more, because I'm like, if people like this have guns, then I want a gun to protect myself from these psychos.
And to quote Coleon Noir, you are the first line of defense in your life, because when the police are 5 minutes away, you're right there. Anyone who wants to defend themselves should have a gun, but I'm not going to get into that screed. We'll be here all fucking night.
Yeah.
As I said, 2A absolutist. Y'all just comes. You can give my Glock a blowjob if you have a problem.
But
you'll get a 9mm load.
Getting back on the rails.
Sorry, I need to recover.
Sorry, Monk.
Getting back on the rails, I'd say the other slight exception that's been less remembered than Blood Dragon is Primal.
Far Cry Primal?
I totally forgot about that.
A lot of people
Yeah.
did. And I think the reason a lot of people did is because, from what I recall, Ark kind of came along and completely stole its thunder.
Well, Ark had already been out for a little while, and the comparisons to Ark were just like Conan Exiles got a comparison to Ark. It was inevitable. And unlike Conan Exiles, which has a small dedicated group and managed to at least make itself somewhat unique compared to Ark, Far Cry Primal never really got that.
I think because of the fact that the audience that Far Cry had built up was so far removed from what something like Primal would want to do. But there's of course been some side stuff, and I know some people might say, what about New Dawn? New Dawn was nothing more than an in-between sequel to 5 that was doing a lot of the same stuff.
My answer to what about New Dawn would be, what about it?
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing. What the fuck?
It's the one with the evil it's the one, I shouldn't say evil. It's the one with the two ladies decked out in what looks like post-apocalyptic armor survival kits that are, for whatever reason, emblazoned bright, hot pink and purple.
Wait, what the fuck?
Just look up the box art to Far Cry New Dawn.
It's literally an acid trip.
I remember that some people lauded Ubisoft for making these the mascots of Far Cry New Dawn, and then some people were like, "This is sexist and racist." I'm like, "What? What?" Because they like to throw around those buzzwords.
New Dawn. Oh, this. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. It looks stupid, so I didn't buy it.
The only reason I know about it is because of the video that the Russian Badger did on it.
The Russian Badger. Badger was on Maxor's most recent video, by the way.
I forgot he did. He did.
And
But so is Iron Mouse.
The big problem the big problem that you end up having with the gameplay loop of something like Far Cry and this is a problem that you see with a lot of open world games, of not being able to have a variety of combat encounters. Assassin's Creed had this problem to an extent, and then the problem got worse in a brand new way with post Origins. But I'd say Far Cry has this problem a lot bigger, because it's a lot of the same problems that we see with most with that whole military shooter craze that we had to suffer through of firefights being turned into a shooting gallery.
It's like you're at the circus, or maybe an amusement park.
I'm not amused.
I never said you would be. It's an amusement park. It's where you park your amusement to die.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have to bring the brats with you.
And I know some people might say, well, you don't have to go in shooting, you can go stealthy. Here's the problem. There's still, whether you're doing stealthy or doing shooty, you're still using the same set of actions. i.e. there's not a whole lot of missions designed to take the stealth in a new direction.
Yeah, there's no third option. There's just this or that.
Well, even with first off, when I'm always kind of iffy about doing stealth action, because one of them is going to end up getting in the way of the other. That's the reason why the Thief games, at least 2 of them, are held in such high regard.
Well, the only place that stealth action has ever succeeded is from a game series by a Japanese man.
Mm-hmm.
I know
Hideo.
some people will say that Splinter Cell had better stealth.
I was gonna say Splinter Cell.
Yeah, but Splinter Cell is almost a purely stealth game. It actively discourages you from open combat, just like the Thief games.
Mm-hmm. However,
There was a choice either to sneak past them. You don't even have to use action or stealth action. There's a whole.
However,
avoid them.
However, Splinter Cell went down in quality very quickly. The quality over the years was not as consistent. I know some people will swear by Splinter Cell and swear by it at Metal Gear's expense, but for one, the only person who believes that you can only be a fan of one or the other is Razor Fist. Two, one of them is trying to be stealth action, the other is trying to be a stealth game, and there was also the fact that you had a revolving door of people at the helm instead of one guy who all the roads lead to.
Yep, it's the same reason that other Tom Clancy properties have had fluctuating quality issues with Ubisoft.
Yeah, I know some, especially the further and further we go into things. Vegas, I'd say was all right. I never played Vegas 2. And while I defended Siege when we talked about the hero shooter problems that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Siege being as good as it became is more in spite of Ubisoft than because of them.
And even then, it still has its issues.
Oh yeah. And when it comes to stuff like when they tried to bring back Ghost Recon with Breakpoint. Breakpoint was so very obviously an attempt to try and force the Ubibox formula we've talked about into a new franchise, and it didn't stick. Breakpoint and Wildlands were absolute flops because I think by this point everybody got wise to the idea.
I have to at least counter you a little bit on that, Monk. Wildlands is definitely a flop.
Mm-hmm.
But Breakpoint did have enough novelty to it to have at least 6 months to a year of good lifetime. The issue there, or was it Wildlands that came first? I can't remember.
The two of them kind of blend together, you know?
Yeah, but I remember that the second game was so disappointing, it got excoriated even by the paid monkeys called critics.
It was Breakpoint was the second one.
Yeah, Wildlands was it, like I said, it was at least novel enough that people followed it for a good while.
Mm-hmm. But Breakpoint, ironically enough, broke people. And what's even more funny is a few days ago it was announced that they had canceled a Ghost Recon Battle Royale game, which I'm pretty sure nobody fucking asked for.
I didn't even know it existed.
I didn't know it existed either.
Nobody knew it existed.
Nobody knew until 3 days ago.
Nobody knew until they had announced that they were canceling it.
Mm-hmm.
They should have just not mentioned it, dude.
It would have come out in a few knowledge of it would have come out in a few years, but I don't know. I don't know what would possess them to think that. Actually, no. What I take that back. I know exactly why they think they'd try and get away with that, because Warzone.
Yeah.
And Warzone isn't doing too hot either because it's been having hacking problems for a while.
Looking at it, the best times for Ghost Recon specifically were Advanced Warfighter and Advanced Warfighter 2, really. They were rated very, very highly on the proper hardware. I don't know why they tried to put Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter on PS2. Of course it was going to run like shit at that point.
Did? What the fuck?
It has a 44 out of 10 according to Metacritic on PS2.
44 out of 100, you mean?
Or 100, yes. 44 out of 100.
Yikes.
But on the Xbox 360, something adequately equipped to handle it, 90 out of 100. This is why you should not make versions of games for hardware so outdated that you weren't designing for it in the first place.
Oh yeah.
And just to make an extra buck and decline your credit and like credibility and like respect, yeah.
Yeah. But when it comes to the other thing is that, as we've seen, Ubisoft has decided to dive headfirst into monetization. So I suppose this is as good a time as any for us to talk about the Quartz incident.
Oh no, what's that?
They tried to make their own NFTs.
Oh god.
And it got so bad, and they sucked so bad. They thought that in order to make people a bit more amenable to the NFT project, that they would give their staffers exclusive NFTs of these quartz things, and plan to have them
for like weapons and armor and like outfits or something.
Yeah, which is a surefire. Which, if you actually equip those in a multiplayer match, you may as well be saying, "Please bully me, please teabag me after you shoot me." Because that's exactly what you're gonna get. And it is this case of not understanding not just their audience but also not understanding the market. But you know how we mentioned the whole thing about tricking people? How could I bring that up and not talk about Watch Dogs?
Oh fuck you! Fuck you!
I like Watch Dogs.
No. What he's talking about is the infamous E3 debacle that was uncovered by data miners. When Watch Dogs' original teaser gameplay footage was shown during the E3 that they announced it, it had some very, very beautiful graphics, very smooth gameplay. Everything came together really well. When people bought the game and got it, it was nothing like what was shown in E3. And data miners eventually found that there was a graphics limitation lock in the code that if you changed your configuration files using certain tools, you could unlock the E3 graphics mode, which in those options was called E3 demo graphics or something along those lines. They literally shipped the game with a graphics lock, and no one knows why. Because they never said why. And it's not like they ever tried to sell a DLC that gave you better graphics, though I'm sure they would have tried to if they hadn't been found out so quickly. I got Watch Dogs at its release, and I will say it's actually a pretty fun game. At least Aiden's story is. Anything beyond Watch Dogs 1, I haven't bothered to play because I got my fill of what Watch Dogs is from Watch Dogs 1.
2 was trying to be a bunch of fucking Seattle-ass hipsters.
I skipped 1 and played 2 first. And I'm like, okay, this is okay. Then I played 1, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why are the graphics so bad for, like, when it came out? What the fuck?
And now you know.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Now I know.
and knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
But
How ironic what we were talking about earlier.
Coincidental, not ironic.
But then Legion came along, and Legion decided not only to go into the political end in the worst ways, but you remember when I had thought that the whole jumping between characters was an interesting idea?
But yes, I remember when you thought that was an interesting idea. I also remember when you thought that they were going to implement it poorly, which they did.
Yep.
Yep.
It really is a burden being right all the time.
Now,
Yes.
Monk, do you know how I describe Watch Dogs Legion?
Shit.
Watch Dogs, if it was a bad roguelike.
Oh my
Pretty
god, true.
Pretty much.
Because so long as you have one person left to recruit other characters, your game isn't over.
Nope.
You just have to now recruit characters with the skills you need again, and build trust with them again, and also those characters may not be as good as the others were due to the roguelike elements of every person in London being randomized. Also, the fact that they tried so clearly to go with somehow being like, let's be honest here, that version of London is just Ingsoc. It is just Ingsoc. It is just George Orwell's 1984.
Or someone who read the Cliff Notes of 1984.
Okay.
Yes. And once again, I have to use my phrase here. 1984 was a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual. You stupid pieces of shit.
But I'd also like to point out that when it came to Watch Dogs Legion, the combat was only passable when I cheese it. That is the death knell of any combat system, is if I have to cheese in order to progress. And the only time that the story got better, surprise, surprise, is when Aiden showed up in a DLC.
Oh hey, Aiden Pierce, the only character I found worth playing.
And the character everybody says looks generic.
And yet
Hey,
he's
yo.
cooler than everybody else.
His backstory's cooler too. Who can say in this universe, hey yo, my wife and kid got murdered, by the way.
And I took down the entire city of Chicago because of it.
Yeah, dude. The best.
I wonder
The
if
second one's
he
just
hangs
a
out
bunch
with...
of hipster trying to cause trouble, and the first one's like, I'm doing a revenge John Wick style mission to destroy everyone.
For everyone who fucked me up, yep.
But with hacking.
I have to. I'm trying to remember here real quick. Excuse me. Who? He didn't join DedSec, did he? He had them help him, but he didn't join them.
I don't think he did, and he's always acted very much on his own own terms.
Yeah, he also thought that DedSec was misguided and not doing shit the right way. Literally, the only reason he works with them is because they can give him the hacks and stuff he needs to absolutely fucking destroy CTOS.
Mm-hmm. But the sad thing is, because of this emphasis on trying to do this one-size-fits-all approach with the Ubi box, Some of the other stuff that Ubisoft had made around that time ended up getting overlooked. Their brief attempt to try and revive Rayman with Origins and later Legends was vastly overlooked, and especially Legends, because when you manage to make a level version of Black Betty and Eye of the Tiger, and actually make them work. But there was also stuff like Child of Light.
I like Child of Light. It was so cute.
And it even
And the
got...
music was so good.
You know what's really fun about Child of Light? It recently got attention again because she's a playable character in Bloodstained. In Bloodstained.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was so cute. Oh my gosh.
And what's very telling when it comes to these focuses is Ubisoft has developed a niche for themselves of finding new and interesting ways to get in their own damn way. Because that is the best way for me to describe the problems with them.
And they're like they're going good for like a little bit, and then they just sabotage themselves. And everything good they did just goes into the trash.
Well, a lot of the things they make that are good don't get a lot of attention, which is their fault because they don't market them very well.
But also, even when they do market it properly, they put in things that nobody wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big apologist for Honor, for instance.
Not my type of game, but I understood why people liked it.
And people still play it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But they put things in it as well that
They're very infuriating.
Yeah.
That's the big one. The big one
That's the
is
nicest way to put it.
the big one that we see with a lot of their games, especially these days, is the whole pointless rarities when it comes to equipment and the like.
Yeah, and they have pets in that game too, which mean nothing.
I think we've gotten to the point where where people are getting more and more wise to monetization. And when you end up trying to put that in a game, people are going to notice, and they're going to rip you a new asshole for it.
I swear, not every game in its entirety in this entire world needs monetization.
Unfortunately, they want to do it because they want to make money.
Yeah, I was gonna say money.
So I like indie games for the most part because they haven't gotten to their egotistical.
I could. I was trying to think. The main thing, other than the fact that, a lot of them have egos.
No, some there's some good out there.
I'm not saying that there isn't, but
I'm not saying all. I'm just some of them are actually
Sorry.
Listen.
I would advise not using indie games as a security blanket to run to. I had this conversation when Razorfist did the whole embrace pulp heroism mandate of if you're jumping into one because it's not X, you're only trading a problem. You're not fixing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And other than the fact that they need to make money for a lot of them, it's just there's so much for some people. Some of these developers, unfortunately, it's just oh, time crunch. We have to get shit. We have to get this out, and it's bad. So they're trying to cover their mistakes with all these in-game purchases.
But
With
when it comes to open world, I do think a lot of people who design open worlds aren't designing a world, but designing a set of levels that are made to appear like one, as I mentioned earlier. The other thing is not allowing people to explore, and I've seen some people argue that you can't really do exploration if the game is supposed to be set in a city. I don't agree with that. And the fact that we talked about Insomniac Spider-Man, it serves as a perfect counter.
Yeah.
Because can you fast travel in Insomniac Spider-Man? Yes.
Yes.
Did
Do
I?
you? No.
No, I didn't.
No. Like I said,
I traveled by web everywhere, dude.
exactly. Fucking exactly. That was
Why
my
would you
point
give
when we
me a
talked about
fast
it earlier.
travel?
yeah,
No
no, it's like
point.
because at the end of the day, fast travel works if it's one too far of a distance, and also the way you get there just doesn't feel right. But then Insomniac Spider-Man, you don't even if it takes that long, you're enjoying the energy of webbing that you don't give a care if you have to go so long or it takes so long to get there. You're enjoying yourself.
Not to mention, you might
Sometimes-
find something off the beaten path as you do it, and suddenly
Lose
find.
track, and you like start like having fun webbing, and then you're like, oh, there's another collectible. Let me go get that. Not the story mode.
Or there's someone to fight because somebody's being assaulted, or there are
It's the car.
110 million different things.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
whenever I've talked about the issues that happen with this UbiBox style open world, there is one entry that some people try and throw at me to use as a gotcha, and that is The Witcher, specifically 2 and 3.
I'm abstaining.
I've played The Wild Hunt and its DLCs in full multiple times. Are these people fucking retarded?
Yes.
Thank you. It was a rhetorical question, but I knew what the answer was.
First off, there's the whole thing of The Witcher not being shy when it comes to content, especially just the base game alone with Wild Hunt.
There's so much. There's so much.
Mhm.
There's so much to do. But the thing saying, "Oh, it's UbiBox 2." No, it's not. Did you hear our elements of UbiBox earlier? Go to tower to uncover piece of map, to uncover side quests, to go to next tower, to uncover piece of map, to uncover side quests, to go to next tower. No,
Oh, thanks.
that is not The Witcher 3.
I think some people think it applies because of the fact that you can mark objectives on your map and then be guided to them.
Yeah, but The Witcher is okay. So there's an in-universe explanation for stuff like that. Witchers are magically mutated people.
Mm-hmm.
They have things like sixth senses and access to magical signs, special training. There's a bunch of different things Witchers do because they're fucking monster hunters. And while I love Monster Hunter the video game, this is not the same thing. They hunt what you would consider dark folklore monsters. Things from the darkest depths of Polish folklore. And it's not pretty for them. Yes, it's a harrowing world for everybody. And yes, there's some magical bullshittery to get you to your next target.
But the key is implementation, because with the whole multiple targets thing when trying to hunt one particular monster, you are going through the clues the way a ranger is supposed to work, or just any old form of tracker.
Any investigator, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's no different than retracing the clues in the Arkham games.
Yep. And I would even say that The Witcher has some DNA from how Rocksteady did combat in the Arkham games too.
I can definitely see that.
I say some, it's not a lot.
No. It is, if only because of the fact that you are, even when they drop the whole 3 style thing, you are still doing there is still that common misconception about Witchers. Steel for humans, silver for monsters, even though any Witcher worth his salt will tell you both are for monsters.
Yeah, that is my favorite anecdote from the Witcher books. Is Geralt walks into an inn, a drunk guy comes up to him and says, "So I heard the 2 swords you have, one are for men and one are for monsters." And Geralt, very quietly, "They're both for monsters."
Mm-hmm.
Implying that humans are just as monstrous as the monsters outside.
Oh yeah.
And that is the truest truth that ever was when it comes to the Witcher series.
Mm-hmm.
But anyone who's saying the Witcher entries, especially 2 or 3, is Ubibox, you don't know what Ubibox is at that point. You have said enough to convince me that you don't actually know the subject matter.
Or that
you're arguing in bad faith. Either one is bad. Don't do either.
Yeah, a lot of this is a case of the just as bad kind of argumentation. Or
around here we hate the just as good, just as bad argument as much as everyone else.
The only time I want to hear just as good is when I hear the mating cry of the poor is trying to convince me to buy a Taurus.
Sorry,
Monk.
what did you just say to me?
the poor's trying to convince him to buy a Taurus. Taurus being a manufacturer of handguns.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Monk. There are some revolvers Taurus make that are really good, like the Taurus Raging Bull. And let's not forget that Taurus did get an entire Beretta factory to themselves on the cheap. So the Berettas made by Taurus, which aren't called Berettas because that's a different manufacturer, are as good because it's the same fucking mechanical manufacturer.
Let me pivot. That they're trying to tell me to get a high point.
No!
what's a high point?
No!
Or just be quiet. Don't. I'm gonna say this. Look out for yourself, and right now, just enjoy pain that is there.
You will puke. You will puke. They are the ugliest, stupidest fucking guns. They are not reliable, except if you throw them. Literally, they held a vote to name one of their newer handgun models, and they held it online. What do you think happened? It got named the Yeet Cannon.
Ugh, God, they look ugly. Oh my God!
I told you, no, no. They're cheap as fuck.
I think one of them is like 150, and you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, and it's stupid.
Okay, I was kind of distracted. What was it again?
The high point Yeet Cannon.
You may as well use the reverse throwing pistol from Cursed Halo.
High points are the one good thing I can say about high points is they're cheap.
Okay, whose fifth grader came up with this little fantasy design?
What are you talking about, fantasy design? That's how the gun actually looks.
Okay, who let their fifth grader into the design shop? Because bullshit on this.
Rick? You have no idea how deep the rabbit hole goes, kid.
I'm sticking with my spear. I'm sticking with my spears and swords.
Yeah, same here.
However, that said, Monk, keep a load of these on standby just to torture Xantrix with.
Why? I have a Glock 19, a very serviceable handgun. He's not going to be able to torture me. It even has a red dot, but I have to get a new battery for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that way if you go off the rails, you
Rails!
just show. Yeah.
We're off the rail.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's what happens here.
I do want one thing that I kind of touched upon, but I do want to highlight a bit more of is the utter pointlessness of claiming that a leveling system and a skill tree counts as RPG mechanics. When a lot of the skill tree that you see is either A, way too goddamn big for what you can do, or B, the additions are so incremental to barely even matter when you're doing when it doesn't change your sandbox.
Whereas things like leveling in The Witcher 3, which is a big damn deal, vastly change how your Geralt is going to play.
And just as a case in point, when it comes to skill trees being way too much, this is the skill tree for Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
No, Monk.
No!
Don't do it.
No!
Look at this bullshit!
Oh,
No,
oh
Monk.
no. It's disgusting.
Okay, I will say this. I don't know which one I would prefer more. This or 13-2.
13.2 is an RPG though, so
Yeah, it's still also it's the worst one ever.
no, that's 10.2.
And as far as tree designs, 13, I would say 13 is more offensive than 13.2's skill design, because you're dealing with in 13.2 you had a Crystarium track instead of this massive overwrought tree.
Everybody hates the Crystarium.
I don't hate it. I just think it's misguided. And I know some people might say, well, what about the massive tumbleweed of passives in Path of Exile?
What about them?
That's a case of apples and oranges. But the point that I'm getting at is, in a lot of open world games that utilize a skill tree, you should anytime you have some sort of skill tree system, even spending one skill point should feel like it matters.
Like it did in Far Cry 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the Valhalla and just in Assassin's Creed, when they have these things, some of them were absolutely useless, and
you have to get
useless.
And you have to get them to get to the useful stuff.
Or one of our favorite phrases, Zan, pay to not suck.
I hate those, dude. I hate them so much.
I'll give you what we have used as the quintessential example of pay to not suck. If you've ever played any D&D, and yes, I'm using D&D specifically because it is the most ubiquitous RPG and because the most snake-bitten class applies here, the Ranger is the most snake-bitten class in D&D's history. It sucks. It's a multi-role class, for one, and Coops has noticed the skill tree, Monk. It's a multi-role class. It's supposed to do multiple things. It is not good at any of them. It isn't even competent at any of them. And in order to make it competent, you have to take specific feats, which means you're paying feats to not suck.
Or one of my favorite examples, Whirlwind Attack.
Fuck you.
No thanks. I'm not getting paid.
You know, I'm not. You can pay yourself to fuck yourself. Go ahead.
I think I'm a clone now. There's always two of me just hanging around.
You know, I'm sure that Weird Al knew exactly what he was doing when he made that song, and how many people would take it the wrong way.
Or the right way.
I don't think Weird Al would want a clone of himself, to be honest.
It's Weird Al, though, so let's face it, he's always about the funny and comedy side of it.
Mm-hmm. But these skill trees are definitely an example of other issues in Ubibox games and the games that copy that formula. That we want to make things quote unquote deeper, and it's not really; it's pretty shallow. By adding this skill system that you have to work through to become even more adept at what you're doing. Now, in something like another game we've compared tonight, Ghost of Tsushima, the things you buy abso-fucking-lutely matter.
Yep.
Even the smallest thing you can purchase from Ghost of Tsushima's skill system are they vastly change how effective you are in the game.
Especially since you're kind of squishy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing that I always the thing that I focused on buying first was getting the stances.
Mm-hmm.
Because those stances are how you deal with the different enemy types.
You can technically do it without them, but there's a vast difference between fights with them and fights without them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And as an example, all the techniques are the entire skill tree, if you want to call it that. It's more lines. It's different lines. Each one it's a straight line. You can see what you're getting in what order and why you're getting it, basically. One of the first things you get, perfect parry. You parry at the last possible second to perform a deadly counterattack. It's one of the first things you can see in the samurai technique skill categories. And it has levels to it in this straight line. And those eventually branch out a little bit, but you can get perfect healing parry, which heals when you perfect parry. Unyielding sword parry, which parries unblockable attacks. And then once you get both of those, you can get deflecting arrows. And once you get deflecting arrows, you get resolve, which is your super bar, basically.
But
the way you pull off techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And you continue going down this straight line. It's not like it branches out, and you have to choose which path you're going down. You do eventually just have to get what's in front of you to get to the next level of this area, and in so doing, you get a fantastic set of additions. Each one gives you something new that is immediately effective in the game. Being able to block arrows, fucking brilliant. You need that early on because of all the goddamn pissant archers in this game. Fuck. And each of these eventually comes down to, different huge techniques. There's on the samurai techniques. I think I'm just going to continue using that. There's for the end of the parry line, terrifying parry. You basically have to get everything before it, because you have to get perfect parry to get healing and unyielding. You have to get healing and unyielding to get deflect arrows. You have to get deflect arrows to get resolved and unyielding spear. And then you have to get resolved and unyielding spear to get terrifying. And terrifying parry, when you counterattack after a perfect parry, has a 20% chance to terrify other enemies. And in Ghost of Tsushima, when you terrify an enemy, they commonly trip to the ground and drop their weapon and try to scramble away from you, giving you free fucking kills.
You're making me want to play this game.
You need to play this game. You haven't played this game? What?
No, I haven't. I'm sorry.
It is.
It's one of the best fucking games of like the last 5 years. Totally need to get it and play it. Play it in Japanese because the Japanese voice actors are fantastic.
Oh, most certainly. Like I basically tell people, if you like Japanese movies, just play on the Japanese audio. It works perfectly. Ignore the lips.
Yeah, and the lips change between each version. I don't know if you noticed that, Rick. I've played it on both English and Japanese.
It's been a while. It's been a while, but because I've replayed it. But yeah,
the lip sync changes depending on what audio track you have. They actually mapped two lip syncs. It's the same as Final Fantasy VII Remake. In the remake, if you're in English, the lip sync is to English, and if you're in Japanese, it lip syncs to Japanese. Mm-hmm. But this is a great way. This is the best way to compare UbiBox to things say are UbiBox. Ghost of Tsushima to any UbiBox game. This skill list, no matter which skill list, and trust me, there were times where I had trouble choosing what to spend my skill points on because I didn't know which would be more effective. It's not, this one is clearly better than the other, so I'll buy this one and save those for later. It's, I'm about to go do X thing. Do I need more sneaky techniques and need to buy some stuff from the ghost side of the trees? Or am I going to be in more open combat and need more things from the samurai side of the trees? Are there going to be a lot of different enemies? Do I need more stuff from my stances? And everything is good. There is no bad choice. So really the choice is, what do you think you're going to use most often at that time? And then eventually you get to the end of the game, or at least 2/3 of the way through the game, you'll probably have most of the techniques in every tree, and you just feel unstoppable. You feel like nothing is going to get in your way unless you majorly fuck up. And if you don't majorly fuck up, you're fine. You're just ready to fucking go for it. And it really does make you feel like what the ghost is supposed to be. So every choice in Ghost of Tsushima's skill list is absolutely effective. There's nothing you can take that feels bad at the time you take it. Unless you suddenly find yourself in a situation you're like, well, I didn't really need that. But then you acknowledge, but that's more on me. I didn't read the situation right. Because you know, reading the skill, this is going to be useful in all these situations I normally find myself in. Yeah. But I just didn't find myself in those situations this time. My bad for not finding the correct strategic formula. It's not a fault of the feats. It's not a fault of the skills.
The key thing here is that you don't have situations of numbers go up.
Yeah, everything is some sort of effective tool.
Or a new way to use something that you already have.
Like multi-assassinations, which is always useful.
And how could we bring up stances and not bring up the fifth stance, the easy mode stance?
The stance that you can only get through the story. The Stance of the Ghost, which is a literal super mode. Think of Spartan Rage from God of War, where you go into the stance and all the enemies who witness you going into the stance are immediately terrified.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Every enemy is immediately terrified, and you basically get instant kills for as long as you're in the stance. It's Strawberry Shortcake from No More Heroes 1.
Yep.
You're so right.
But an important and if there's any important lesson to take from all of this, it's, for one, just because something worked in the past doesn't mean that you can have it work again verbatim. I kind of wish certain sports teams would take that lesson. Looking at you, LA Lakers, though I do enjoy your pain.
Yeah, is it a main course or a good appetizer?
Appetizer. The main course is me laughing at the continued misery of Toronto.
I approve.
Because remember, the leaves fall in the spring. The other thing is if you're going to have side missions, have what you do in them be if not a variety, at least contextualize them so an illusion of variety is present. 3. There is no mathematical formula when it comes to game design. As an aside, I've had some people say that some of the decisions that Zan and I are making with our own project are arbitrary. Here's the big secret of the industry: we're making all this shit up.
Yeah. Some of the decisions we make are arbitrary. Yeah. Your point? What's your point? Our entire game
You want
is...
to mess with this man. He's got guns galore.
That's a... I'm not trying to strong-arm people here yet, but,
Hey,
If you want to start something, go to his house. I bet you'll get only a few words in and you'll be dead.
Verbally. I'll kill them verbally. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But the reason that, especially when it comes to our game, the reason that games may have decisions that you think are arbitrary is because they are. The game is being designed by people who are designing it for a specific idea in mind. And that means that some decisions are just going to be like, well, we don't really like this thing, so we're just not going to have it. It doesn't fit our vision. And people are going to be like, well, that's kind of arbitrary. Well, yeah. It's our vision. It's not going to be something objective that you can fucking measure. Mm-hmm. So there are going to be decisions that you think are arbitrary. Some might even find them stupid. And you know what? Hey, if you live in the US, you live in a free country where you're free to be fucking wrong. But the only person who can say whether the decision for that game is wrong or right is the person or people making that fucking game.
Mm-hmm.
Or book. Or
yes,
TV show.
This
Or
extends to
whatever
to creatives in general. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And the final thing is that a skill tree and leveling up does not mean that your game has RPG elements.
I mean, if you're going by the most pedantic of definitions, sure, but that's pedantry at that point. And while we love some good pedantry from every time to time, when we're talking about serious stuff, get the fuck off our lawn before we punch you in the face.
I'll throw you down the mountain of the temple.
Oh, Monk, throwing them down the mountain of the temple is too easy.
Yeah, they'll see that coming. You got to do something.
Well, not only that, you can only do it once because they'll end up dead.
Yeah.
And I know Monk I know Monk from the times that we've made these little cajoling threats before that death is too easy for people. You can only do it once.
Gotta give them perpetual, never-ending cycle of suffering and torture.
I like this girl. I'm glad we kept her.
But ultimately, it's kind of funny that that this system that Ubisoft has relied upon so much is now so much their undoing that they can't even get a buyer. They were shopping around to find somebody to buy the company after all of these scandals. Nobody's biting. I can't imagine why. Putting aside the fact that no investor wants a media circus.
Crazy. I wonder why they won't buy it.
Either that, or they're waiting for the company itself to buy it, so that they can pick up the pieces. You know, kind of like what happened when THQ went belly up.
Yeah, and THQ Nordic has been doing some good stuff from time to time, so all in all, I think it was better for them.
Yeah. Although, and the same thing can apply to Midway, but Midway screwed Midway.
It's Midway. What do you expect?
It's totally mid.
Look, I could do a 2-year class on all the mistakes that Midway has done, except I don't need to because Matt McMuscles did it for me. But that I think is going to cover it. I think we've exhausted this particular topic to its conclusion over the last 2 hours and change. There will be a few live stream things coming down the pipe this week. First off, on Tuesday, the return of The Men Who Stare at Sports Ball. This time doing a grading for all of the NHL teams.
Oh boy!
And it's especially we're in especially good timing because now all the dust has settled from free agency. Wednesday, I am doing an interview, but after that Zan and I will be doing the conclusion to the character creation roundtable we've done for Heavens and Heresies. Friday, Valley of the Judge returns with the Invoker. I get the feeling we're gonna have fun with that.
I mean, we had fun with the historically accurate druid, so yeah.
And I do have another interview I'm doing on the 30th, and of course next week will be another adventure into the halls of the Watch. And that should be a fair bit of fun. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and